Hey guys, just before we get into it, we would like to acknowledge our podcast partners in Beyond Blue.
If you're feeling low, anxious, or need to talk to someone, please contact the people at Beyond Blue. Their phone number is 1300 224 636.
You can visit them on the website as well at www.beyondblue.org.au/get support. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Lystics AFL podcast. I'm your host, John Van Norden, and here with me as always, it's been a couple of weeks and we haven't been in the same room, but here with me right now is my good friend, Sean Lewis. Sean, how you doing this week, mate?
I am doing fantastic, John. It is, I'd say it's amazing to be here. It feels very good. How about you, mate? How's everything?
Good, mate. It's, we're recording this on a Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. So
we've had a few technical issues.
I think I think that the podcast studio, which is currently doubling as a office and has about 6 monitors sitting on it at the moment, as well as a whole lot of pillows and other things to sort of try to soundproof the current room. It's happening. It's working, but we got there.
We did.
It's crazy how different it feels trying to record this thing, actually being in the same room as compared to what we've been trying to do, which is be socially distant and do it in our own houses. So it's been really, really good.
Yeah, it's I think it's just nice to be back. It's nice, so obviously Victoria, we've pared back our restrictions a little bit. So we added the 5th reason to leave the house, and that's friends and family. And I think we've both been on record on the podcast saying how good this thing is for our mental health as well. So, I kind of, we've spoken about it for probably the last 2 weeks about when we would make the trek into the same studio. We are socially distant 1.5 meters away from each other. The advantage of John's podcast setup is that he's at one end of a long table and I'm at the other. And with these nice extendable stands on the microphones, we can spread our wings a little bit. It's just really nice to be back in the same room and recording, and takes a lot of the stress off trying to record. And it's nice to be out of the house because I've been recording these at my work desk at home, and probably the same as you really, because this is your work desk at the moment. But I think it's just felt doing it, you're not leaving the house, and it builds up a little bit.
Not leaving the office, and I think a lot of people are feeling that. A lot of people that are working or at home are definitely sort of feeling that it's a bit of a trap, where you can end up being in the same spot for an entire day. And look, we've got it easier than a lot of people as well.
We do,
that don't have a job, and are going through some harder times right now. So not trying to compare situations, just merely pointing out that it's definitely not as easy as it has been in the past. And I think we're both thankful though to be back into the same room.
Absolutely, and not just us that's back at the moment.
Footy's back.
Footy's, well, it's not quite back, but we've got a launch schedule. We've got players are training, and it's nice. It's probably been a really interesting few weeks just around the AFL and what's I guess what's been discussed in the media, and obviously with all the different governments and different restrictions and everything. It's been really fascinating and that to watch. But it was nice that the AFL has a start date, and June 11th. What is it? Yeah, June 11th. So not next Thursday. I think it's the Thursday after. We will have football return with a...
Probably from the... I know I've still got to probably have some technical issues when I'm actually editing this thing, because we're using a new program, a new computer, or an old computer, and much older computer, I will say, but a different computer. So it might not come out on Thursday, but it would be 2 weeks from release.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks if I release it tomorrow, Thursday. Then Footy will be back in 2 weeks.
So and so that's really exciting, I guess. It helps us start that path to normality, which I think is really important. The NRL's back this week. I think, is it? Yeah, this week. So if you're that way inclined into the dark arts of the rugby league, you can settle back. I think I might even watch just because it's sport. It's nice to see some live sport. I found myself watching some random international soccer, and I think it's been pretty interesting. Watched a lot of The Last Dance, and
Last Dance was awesome. For those of you that haven't watched it or haven't heard about it, which I'd be shocked about, but haven't watched it, it's a Michael Jordan documentary.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
About the final season.
It's not just that. It's about his career.
Yeah,
it's great. It's done really well.
The theme, The Last Dance, is all focused around what I guess the accumulation of all of his experiences led to, which was the final season at the Bulls. But it's one of the better done sports docos that I've seen. I think that even my wife, who as soon as she saw it came out, was like, that's one you can watch by yourself. I started watching it one evening while she was just working on the couch, and about halfway through the first episode, she started saying, "Who's that? And who's this other person?" And you just notice, she's getting really, really into this. She's got a new pair of Jordans. She's got a Jordan singlet now that she wears when she wants to feel inspired. So it's definitely It's definitely pretty awesome. I actually got one in the cupboard right behind you. I'm going to get it out and wear it.
Oh, good on you. So John's now mate, 1.5. So it's great to be back. It's great to obviously get through all this, but and footy being back, I guess it's probably now is a better time more than ever to probably just delve into a bit of a mental health few minutes. I think this will be, because we haven't done a mental health minute for a few weeks, and obviously at the moment it's the most important thing on everyone's mind, to make sure that our mental health is right up to spec, and we're looking after ourselves and each other. So John, tell me how you're doing, and what have you done to get yourself through the weeks of isolation leading up to our release from captivity?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I haven't done enough, and probably last week I struggled a bit. So I don't know if I've mentioned it too much on air, but I inherited a form of rheumatoid arthritis from my mum, which is, it's just pain. You deal with it, but it was getting significantly worse, so I had to change medications, and then I had last week I had a reaction to one of the medications. I thought I had COVID, so I went and had to go get one of the tests. Got that thing shoved up my nose, which was no fun, but I was definitely feeling it, and I realised on the Saturday morning, which was 2 or 3 days after I'd had that test and the results had come back negative, that I was still having these side effects. I didn't know what it was from. Checked the website for sulfasalazine, for what are the reactions and stuff like that to that, and number one on the thing was headaches, and I was like, okay, then so I'm having a reaction to this medication, and I stopped taking it immediately, but I had headaches until today, which is Wednesday. So I've just never had so many annoying headaches, and I think that my mental health prior to that was average. And then on the Monday of that week, I thought to myself, you know what? Before I came into this, I had values and goals, and I just started focusing on my values, and going, this is the kind of stuff that'll get me through. My work improved for that one glorious day before I got headaches, and then for the last week, as I said, it's been a bit of a write-off. But
I think the day you told us you were going to get tested, we were planning on a podcast last week, and we had to cancel. And I know the first thing that went through my mind was definitely to call you and check up. And it's probably the most flat I've heard you in a long time.
Yeah,
to be honest,
couldn't focus. So it made work really hard. It made enjoyment hard, because I just needed to not think, and I couldn't get anything really into my head. So this week though is probably the best my mental health has been since everything starting. Not because I'm doing anything different in terms of the opening up, like I, in the last week, have not done a single thing different. I'm still staying indoors most days. I'm just going for walks with the dog, and still not seeing anyone, with the exception of you today. But it's just a personal shift mentally in what is important for me. And I think that if I'd made that shift earlier, that I probably would have had a much more enjoyable few weeks.
Yep.
How you doing though, boss? You've been locked up. I've been locked up in a way that, is pretty in line with me deciding to stay in for a weekend. It's just permanent now. Whereas you've been locked up and you've got a little newborn as well still.
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, it's probably been the opposite side. Like I've really loved the lockdown. It's given me a chance to spend a lot of quality time with my daughter and my wife, and my 2 dogs. So that's been absolutely fantastic. Being very thankful for having the ability to work from home, having that flexibility, and as well, my work, in comparison to a lot of others, we're quite busy at the moment. So, very thankful for a lot of that. In terms of my mental health space, it hasn't been without its challenges. Obviously, being cooped up with a 4-month-old, it does present a lot of challenges. And my wife and I are lucky. We have great communication, and it's something we value very highly in our relationship is that communication. And it's been really important that we talk through, and it's not, it hasn't been without its issues. We've had our moments, as everyone does, but I feel that out of these 6 to 8 weeks of lockup, our relationship has come out stronger, and I've been fortunate enough to get to spend 8 wonderful weeks watching my daughter develop from an infant into still an infant, I guess, but the developmental leap between 2 and 4 months is just awesome. Like, she's gone from she smiles, but she doesn't really smile at anything in particular, to now, in the morning when she sees me for the first time, she smiles and her eyes go big and wide, and they're just the little joys about it, and just stuff that I absolutely love. So, very fortunate, very lucky, and I think overall my mental health's been pretty good. You gave me a scare last week, which is, I know we spoke a bit, and I called you after your test and everything. So, that's been probably one of my focuses, is trying to check up on friends I know who are isolated by themselves. So last week I've got 2 good mates of mine who are both isolating by themselves. So I've been trying to do weekly checkups on them, and keeping in touch with you and some of the other boys. It's pretty good. So just coming out of this, a lot of strong bonds, and making sure everyone's all right, and getting back to living a normal life hopefully soon. That's really the dream.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know that, I think it's funny because, I sort of, like, obviously we can consider ourselves lucky for still having jobs, and everything, and being able to work through this period of time. And I sort of think, I really felt confident that I was going to have my job. And like, I'm not, as I said, trying to say anything untoward here. I just did. But then when I think about our small immediate friendship group that we share, which is 6 people, if one person's lost their job, multiple people have had hours reduced, salaries reduced, things like that, myself included. And I think, okay, then I actually, like, the immediate people that I know have all been actually really impacted by this. So
it was probably even worth noting the company that we started at, and where we met, when we started as graduates all those years ago, and where we both met, that company's been absolutely decimated. Not just by COVID. I think COVID just accelerated a few other things. I think there's a few industry collapses there and stuff, but and a lot of the guys that we're talking about in that group, have all worked there or work in similar industries and stuff. So a lot of our close friends are feeling the pain, and there's a lot of people that we know from that workplace who are definitely being rocked by this very hard. And yeah, it's pretty sobering, really.
Yeah.
So
and I thought just before you were struggling for the technical term between infant and infant. I've just looked it up, and the technical term is bigger infant. Is the second one? So
well, she is big, that's for sure. She's so my wife and I are both quite tall. Like I'm 6'7" and my wife's 5'10". So the chances of us having a small child are probably not high.
they're on the low side.
Yeah, well, mind you, like my mum's family's quite short. My mum's only about 5'5", so.
So regular height.
Yeah, well, very short for me. And so there is a small chance there, but yeah. So Ava's quite big. She's at the moment she's sitting like 98th percentile for length for her age, and she's not really slowing down. She still looks like a beanpole. So she just looks like the bigger version of what you saw when you last came over, mate. But, it's kind of shocking, like how big she is, and it was last night when I was trying to get her to sleep, and I can remember like having her on my shoulder and like her head sitting on my shoulder, and then only a month ago her like the bottom of her, like basically her bum wouldn't have gone lower than maybe my nipple height, and now all of a sudden her bum's like down almost at the bottom of my ribs, and like you're supporting her so much lower than what you were a month ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're just those little moments, and you go, oh wow, like, oh geez, she's really growing, because you don't really see it day to day.
Yeah. No,
you lose your reference, I guess.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. If you all of a sudden, like if you had a replica doll made up that you could pick up that was a couple of weeks earlier, and you could compare, you'd be like, whoa, this is crazy. But that's not how it happens.
Yeah,
that's a great business idea, though. Replica doll.
Maybe you can start that, mate. I think I'll pass on that one.
For the first year of the life, every 3 months, you get a scale replica of your baby.
3D, put it in a 3D scanner, give it a scan.
Yeah, exactly. So that and same weight, everything, so you can pick it up and hold it and go, wow, this is an amazing experience. Thanks, 3D baby. Well, that's what we'll call it. 3D.
Anyway.
Was it 3D dancing baby? What was that from? There's like a video clip of like.
Wasn't it a music song?
It was a music video with a 3D dancing baby. So I reckon 3D dancing baby is a business that's going to come to you guys soon.
Okay.
Watch out for that. It might be parent company Lystics Pty Ltd. We'll see how we go. We'll start talking about a little bit of footy.
We are a footy podcast, we should probably hit it soon.
Yes. We mentioned that footy's restarted, and the mental health part is a big part, and the AFL's been doing a really good job with some of the videos that they've been putting out. Last Time I Cried, sort of covering...
That was awesome.
Yeah, covering some really important issues that they're probably addressing in a really good way right now.
Yeah, we just watched the latest one, which just dropped tonight, which was in conjunction with NITV. So it had Briggs and Michael O'Loughlin and some of our First Nations players there doing a COVID, I guess, coaches rev up. Make sure you keep your 1.5, cough into your elbow, sanitize your hands, give them a scrub, all that sort of stuff. So that was actually pretty good video, to be honest. I enjoyed watching that.
I think it's all been pretty good. I think that I was pretty happy. I know that we haven't released a podcast in a while, but I was happy that we stopped podcasting at that time, because I think at about that time, maybe even a week before, there was a bit of a saturation point where everything that could be talked about in terms of footy coming back eventually had been talked about. So there was this like 3 week to a month period where the news on in everywhere mainly, but sport news was rubbish. And
I think we were probably heading down that path, which is why we stopped.
Yeah.
We said that's not what we do. We're here to try and look at things and analyse things with a bit of perspective. And
we want to do good content all the time. We can't do any fluff pieces. So it was nice to sort of stop. But you can see even the tone of the AFL articles have improved a lot. So getting into that, we do have, as we said, we've talked about the start date, 11th of June.
Collingwood versus Richmond at the MCG, 7:40.
Yeah.
Turn on your TVs.
If you were, I mean, it's great for viewers, Collingwood Richmond being the first game, just because it's two big names, two clubs that really are at the peak of their powers, or very close to at the very least. But if you were Collingwood and Richmond right now, I reckon you'd be stoked to play such a hard game as your first game back. Because personally, I think that you could lose against Richmond, and Richmond could lose against Collingwood at any time. Even at your best, you could lose against these clubs. So to play against a club that'll bring your level up as quickly as possible, and also you're not at a risk of losing a game that you shouldn't lose, because you could lose this game. Whereas if you played, say, Gold Coast, but your team's just really not up to it right now, you could lose a game that you shouldn't lose if you're a finals contender.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword though, and I think it might have been Luke Hodge said it the other day. He said, he always preferred a couple of hard ones to finish the season because it prepped you for finals. So I guess with it only being a 17-round season, you're knocking off probably one of the stronger games for the year. So I would say, this is probably top 5 toughest matches for the year. Or in terms of high, this is a finals match.
These are two clubs that would see themselves as top 4.
Yep. So I definitely think there's advantages kicking it off in what you were saying, but the flip side is this game won't happen now towards the end of the season. So this is the only chance Collingwood and Richmond get to see each other until they probably face off in finals. And that's kind of the risk with this sort of thing. And I guess, look, in a fully fair fixture like what we're going to have this year, obviously with scrubbing the inequalities of clubs relocating and stuff, but in just a pure fixturing sense of having each team only play each other once. And I guess this is the hardest part is, you only get to see the teams once per year, whereas typically Richmond and Collingwood would play twice. Yeah. So you'd get to see them once now and once at the end of the season. So, definitely think it's going to be a ripper. I'm glad that this is the one that's starting it off. I know they talked about doing the big freeze match, which would have been great as well, Collingwood Melbourne. Either option I think was good. I still, like in a pure footy sense, getting to watch Collingwood and scrubbing my Melbourne bias, watching Collingwood Richmond first game is, that's a spectacle you want to watch.
Yeah, I know, I'm the same. Because Collingwood plays in both those games, so I can't have a Collingwood bias over those two games, but equally, it's a good fit. It would be this for me. I would have liked to have seen that or the Cats Hawks, which is the following night.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Cats Hawks are always good games. They're like, I always want to watch those games. They don't necessarily have to be close, but I always want to watch that, and it'll be the first time and probably the only time that the Hawks will go down to GMHBA Stadium.
Come on, mate. This is okay. I got a bit of a bone with this whole GMHBA, the Cats cracking it and everything. Like, in all honesty, and you can tell everyone I don't often agree with Eddie. I think there's a few things that Eddie says is not the best.
I think we can all agree with that.
I think he should retire as president, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think I've put that on a podcast record. But Eddie said, well, when Geelong play Collingwood, they request to play up in Melbourne because it's worth more up here. Because you make more money. When you're playing Collingwood, you can fill the G or you can fill Etihad, no problems. And GMHBA is a wonderful stadium. And I've had the pleasure of watching footy there multiple times, and I really do, especially the new section is just magnificent.
Yeah, it's awesome for watching footy. Yeah.
And it's probably, to be honest, it's one of the best grounds to watch footy at. You feel like you're actually there, like in it. But it's only 35,000, and the end of the day, Geelong's a football club that needs money to survive. And yes, they make a lot of money at GMHBA, but if you can get 85,000 at the G, you're going to make more money there than you will there. So
I agree. Like I say the same thing because any time a Cats supporter complains about that, because it's a choice
Yeah.
Like, as in, that that's the choice to play big games at the G because it's more beneficial to you.
And remember, every Victorian club, including the clubs who have home ground at the MCG, have to play a home game at Etihad.
Yeah.
That's, Melbourne's done it for years. Collingwood started doing it recently. Richmond do it. Every Melbourne club that is a tenant of the MCG has to actually play a home game at Etihad, which is, unless they sell one, which is what Melbourne did when they went to the NT. They sold those games off. But, like that's effectively and I guess assume that that's what Hawthorn do with their deal as well. Like they sell the Etihad games, so they play their 7 at the MCG and then their 4 down at Launceston. So
yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested to see how the Cats go. I know that they've got an exceptional record at GMHBA Stadium, but they typically, I mean, as I said, during Hawthorn's premium era, they wouldn't have played Hawthorn there.
Well, I haven't played Hawthorn there since 2006 is I think the thing I saw the other day.
And Hawthorn have been good between 2008 and 2017, 16. So it'd be interesting to see them.
I think the Cats are going to be very strong. Like, they know GMHBA, and at the end of the day, dimensionally, it's challenging because it's a skinny cigar. Like, it's 160-ish metres long and only 120 metres wide or something like that. It's a skinny cigar, whereas like the MCG is a lot more round. The Docklands are a lot more round. So you have to play it differently. That said, Hawthorn's coaching and the experience of the players, they'll adapt. Like they've won over at Subiaco. Subiaco, I'm pretty sure from memory, and I may be wrong here, I'm pretty sure Subiaco was another cigar.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly with Subi, but what it sort of made me think, and this might be just me data picking, so not necessarily good practice, but the fact that they've had one final there that I can remember was against Fremantle, because obviously they didn't say that they were going to draw a big enough crowd, so you could have it down there, and they lost it because it's a final. You're actually playing like the best clubs. You're playing the best clubs at your home ground rather than playing the clubs that the AFL allow to go down there. Yeah. And it's not to say that West Coast won't go down and play there and they're one of the better clubs and everything. It's just to say that there are some big clubs that don't go down there, and I would be interested to see what their record's like this year at home.
Yep. Just what I was saying. So Cardinia Park or GMHBA Stadium, 170 metres by 115 wide. Subiaco 175 by 122. So again, like it's the shape of the oval is unique. But it's not uncommon. Like there are enough Hawthorn experienced players on that list who have played at Subiaco.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a detriment to them. We got Brisbane and Freo up next. Up at the Gabba, the Gabatoir.
The Gabatoir, and they're
Freo are located up there on the Gold Coast.
Freo are located up there. That's what I wanted to just sort of cover. So at the moment, Fremantle and West Coast are both located.
They're still at home. So but before round 2, they will move to the Gold Coast. They're staying at the Royal Pines, which is a lovely golf course that apparently they're not allowed to utilise, which to me is baffling. For golf, yeah, but that's just baffling to me. But
I think
it's one of the few social interactions. I'm not getting on Sam Newman's bandwagon, but it's one of the few social interactions you can actually properly socially distance, and it's you're cooping these players up for a full season.
Is golf open for everybody else?
In Queensland? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so then they should allow it. That's a dumb rule.
And it's the same with surfing, but anyway, we'll get over that.
Yep.
So the way it's working is round 2, you will have Freo and West Coast. They are going to relocate to the Gold Coast. And then as of round 3, you'll have Adelaide and Port Adelaide join them on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting that the South Australian government changed their rules regarding contact training just to make sure that they could play that tough,
Yeah, so I think, look,
it's the right thing. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that it's the right thing for the state. I just think it was interesting the order that things happened in.
I think it's, the Premier of South Australia was quite adamant that he felt that contact training. So originally Port Adelaide and Adelaide were going to have to relocate basically last weekend because they weren't allowed to contact train until June the 8th was the original ruling. And I know that the Premier was vocally in public saying that he felt that was wrong, which was interesting because typically you don't really see the Premier question the Chief Medical Officer ever. But that's what happened, and I think the AFL, the body of work they had to do was made a bit hard, obviously with the infraction from the Adelaide players. They got let off with a warning from the police. We kind of look at it and go, was what they did that bad? A lot of us don't think so, but at the same time, they're the rules. You got to follow them. Certainly breached the AFL protocols, but that obviously didn't help their case when they were obviously saying to South Australia at the time, we want to be able to FIFO in and all that. So I think the AFL obviously had to go back into a body of work with the government and prove to them their control measures. I mean, players are getting. You've had a COVID test. I haven't. But what I've been told, and what you said before, it sounds bloody horrible. And they're getting twice a week.
It sucks. It sucked. It was. I've described it to a lot of people. I'll go into full detail right now. I've described it to a lot of people that I have seen shiver and react squeamishly just to my description of it. Which for those of you who don't know, it is an uncomfortable test. It's quick. It's over very quickly, so you don't really get a chance to think about it too much. But it does happen quite quickly. You get two tests: one that's in the back of the throat, and one that goes up through the nasal cavity, so into the nose, which is something that I don't think that many of us have experienced in our time. Something going up the nose, but I'll now go into the detail that I'm talking about. So the first one, you get a little swab on the back of the throat, but what it feels like is, you've got your throat, you got the part that goes down, and then there's the part that actually goes up and connects back into where your nose and everything else is.
Your sinuses, yep.
And that area is the back of the throat part that they're touching, that gap, or the ledge between the nose and everything. They sort of scratch around there with this thing, so you feel like, stop scratching my neck, like this is weird. A very uncomfortable place to touch anyway. And then not very long after that, they go up the nose, and the description I have of it is, do you know that sensation that you get when you sneeze? The sensation that you get only when you sneeze. It's this weird sensation in the back of... Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. That weird feeling that you get when you sneeze. Back of your head somewhere is the weird feeling. Anyway, that feeling, they scratch that thing with a poker, and they poke it for about 10-15 seconds, scratching it, and it is such a strange feeling because you feel your brain, you're like, what? Like, this thing should only activate for half a split second when I sneeze. It shouldn't be being scratched. But then it's over, and you get a notification in a couple of days of whether you've got it or not, and I didn't. I just had headaches, as pointed out earlier. So
yeah,
that's my description. But yes, these guys are getting it twice a week, making sure that they're
So I think the result is the right one for football, and I think the potential here is that I believe there's going to be a review of the restrictions in South Australia around the time of round 2. So potentially, there may be an allowance made for clubs to FIFO, and by FIFO I mean fly in, fly out, which would then mean that Port Adelaide and Adelaide wouldn't have to relocate. So I think the fixturing is being done in a way that if they have to relocate, they will. So you'll see that, Sunday, June 21st in round 3, it's Gold Coast versus Adelaide at Metricon, followed by Fremantle versus Port Adelaide at Metricon. They could both fly up there and play those games and then fly back to their states potentially if they're allowed to stay in South Australia. But we don't know that, which is why the AFL's done what it's done. And I think the AFL has, out of this, they've done a magnificent job. They've had to juggle a lot of things, a lot of different ideas. They've got to manage the players. They've got to manage the government. They've got to manage the federal and state governments. You've got different restrictions in every state. I don't envy the fixturing team and the AFL and the AFL Commission for doing what they've done. I think it's been a huge credit to them. They've worked through this and they've kept a lot of decorum and a lot of respect by the looks of things from the outside. So
So did we talk about the games after Brisbane Fremantle? I know we went into the future.
No,
Carlton Melbourne.
Yep, up at
Marvel Stadium.
That'll be
danger game.
Well, for us it is. Yeah. I mean, if we do what we did against West Coast, where we just bomb it in, maybe we win against Carlton doing that, but I wouldn't imagine. I'd imagine Carlton would be a bit threatening.
Who'd you guys play round one?
West Coast.
West Coast.
So I think the thing there we had 45 inside 50s for 7 goals, and I think we were 30.
That's a fairly common Melbourne.
Yeah, it is, and rightly so. A lot of members were pretty outraged after that, and if you jump on Demon Land after round one, you would see some pretty choice descriptions and some very interesting assessments of the game. And I don't disagree with a lot of them, to be honest. I felt that we slipped into old habits and bombed away, and Josh Marnie tells us on the Inside Demons video vlog or whatever it is, that they're addressing the inside 50. So Saturday, June 13th at 4:35 at Marvel Stadium, we'll find out if they have been. So but look, I think it's definitely a danger game. Carlton are not pushovers, but at the same time, I do think we'll win.
Yeah, they're weakened as well. They've got a couple of outs, so yeah, I'd say that you guys will be alright for there. And then it's the showdown. So in Adelaide, at the Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide versus the Adelaide Crows.
I think it's worth noting that Robbie Gray's looking like he's going to play.
Oh yeah, despite the break.
Yeah. So, and I think this will be a fair touch up for Port. They'll
Port to touch up Adelaide.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree in principle. I think that if it wasn't a showdown, I would be tipping Port comfortably.
I think with no crowd, it makes a difference. I do. I think no crowd for younger teams, you've got nothing to feed off.
Yeah, I don't know if the Crows are that much younger than you. Then I say you being Port because you love Port as well.
I don't really love Port, but
you follow.
I have an interest in them. Yeah.
You have an interest in them. You know what I'm talking about. And most people know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I don't think Adelaide are that much younger. I think that they're playing some young players for sure, but they have a senior experience core. That they might just come out and be like, just for the showdown, we're just going to play a really experienced team, and we're going to go out there and try to cause as much damage as we can to Port.
Yeah, but you can't call on Josh Jenkins anymore. You can't call on
Eddie Betts anymore. Yeah,
so,
I agree.
And they're the kind of guys in a showdown that they're worth. I think between them they're worth 4 goals a game. So
yeah,
you can play as experienced as you like, but Port's got a very experienced lineup if they want to roll the dice there as well. So
yeah, I still reckon the midfield unit at Adelaide is experienced and probably better than the one at Port.
I do think the midfield wise, yeah, absolutely, Adelaide's on top, but defensively and up forward, Port's just got them covered in my opinion. So
we'll see what happens on the day. And then the other showdown, Gold Coast West Coast, the Battle of the Coasters,
and it's being played on the Gold Coast.
On the Gold Coast. So look, Eagles should, on paper, get the win. And as you said, this is the opposite end of the scale to the Richmond's one where you might just go, look, we're going to get the win anyway, probably. Fingers crossed. But I do remember Sydney going up there a couple of years ago thinking that same thing and losing. So that's the only worry that I have for them. Gold Coast are probably wanting to come out and make a statement, but they're a younger side. I think it'll be tougher for them too. Yeah. I think that they will start to get traction in the season when they're playing, say, Fremantle after Fremantle's been on the Gold Coast for 4 weeks. Something of that nature.
I think for the Gold Coast, and this is the part that where young teams are hurt by this COVID stuff, is that you haven't had the chance to really wax. Like when you've got a group that's played together for 5 years, missing a big chunk of training doesn't help, and it doesn't help anyone. But you're not as severely disadvantaged. Like I think about it like local footy. The times when I've coached at local footy and we've gone in deep into finals have been when we've retained kind of our core 15, 16. And some of those guys don't start training until late February for a March kickoff.
Classic.
But they don't lose that connection with the other players because they know how each other plays. And
one more thing as well is that the age group of players that this affects the least is people in their prime. So people probably between the ages of, say, 22, 23 and 27, 28. Those guys are fully in the prime of their game.
Yeah.
They know what it takes to play at AFL level by that age, generally. They've got their fitness programs. They've got their recovery programs. They're eating well. They're doing everything as well as possibly can. It'll be harder for the older guys and it'll be harder for the younger guys to come back at peak. Just because the older guys, the guys I'm talking like Silk, you do lose a bit, even though he will have all the right routines and stuff, you lose a bit, and the younger guys won't have the routines in place.
But the flip side is that for older guys, they've effectively had a 4 to 5 week put your feet up and let your body get better. Yes, they're doing some training and everything, keeping fit, but they're in control and managing that, and they know that they can probably take it a fraction easier. So, in terms of on their body,
because I'm the same. Like, as in, I reckon you can continue to flip side this over and over again. Because I think you go flip side to that, and you go Max King, give him. He's had his taste of AFL footy, and now he gets to go away, watch game tape, and work out for 7 weeks, and he's just going to come out and just
But in 7 weeks as a 19-year-old. You can't develop a 22-year-old key position body. You can't. Max King can't go from the start of COVID looking like he did to looking like Charlie Dixon.
You haven't done enough preacher curls in your time, mate. You can stack mass on.
You can't do it. You can't do it in 8 weeks. That's sustainable anyway. And I think that's the thing. Like, we debated. We talked about Connor Rosie and Silk, and like. I think Connor's probably gone and done everything correct because, he's going to be a great football player. But the fact is he's 2 years in. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. Yeah. And he's still learning the rigours. He's still learning the routines.
Yeah, well, if you take out Rosie and replace him with a kid like Taron Thomas, I was reading some of the articles from Taron Thomas that Aaron Hall was sort of talking about having him live with him. And he was saying that he was still at a point, like in his first season, I don't know if it's the same in his second season, but where he'd finish training and have 3 cans of Pepsi. Like, that's stuff you don't do when you're Silk. You don't do it when you're in your late parts of your career. You do everything right. But it's something you can do as a kid and you can just get away with it. Like, you're not going to... That's just going to go through your system and you'll be fine.
Absolutely.
You won't be peak. You won't be Sam Walsh, but you'll get around and you'll be fine. So, I do agree. Do have to move this along because we're almost at 10 o'clock here, and I'm going to get kicked out by my wife. I can't blame it on her. I'll kick myself out.
So next up, we got GWS versus North Melbourne up at Sydney.
Worth noting that it is also after that game at the SCG, Sydney Essendon, and this is the shared flight. So this is probably...
They're not sharing a flight.
They are.
I thought that was a piss take.
No, they're sharing a flight. So... In the morning,
Really?
Yep, you can read articles about it on afl.com.au. This is not a joke. This is not a drill.
This is not, I'm looking.
Yeah, go look for them. You can just Google it. But what will happen is that North Melbourne and Essendon will get the same flight up in the morning. One group will have the front of the plane, the other will have the back of the plane, and they will then go to their separate grounds. So a team like Essendon has to get up an additional 2 hours early. A team like North doesn't get the additional time on the ground. Like, as in, they might get an 8:30 flight up there. and they might have 2 or 3 hours to get ready before a game, but they're flying and playing on the same day, which is uncommon in AFL. Flying to play, typically they fly home same day. But then after the game, North Melbourne have to hang around until after Essendon and Sydney play, and then get the plane back home with all of the Essendon guys at night, again sharing the plane, and they switch ends of the plane at night, because for some reason that makes sense, even though you would keep your own germs if you stayed on your own end. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've just looked it up.
It's legit. I know. I'm not kidding. This is not a drill. Honestly, getting the same flight up. It's not that. Look, AFL is not like the be all and end all of the world. This isn't like going to kill anybody. It's probably going to protect a lot of people. It's probably going to reduce costs drastically because they're chartering the flight up and back. They get up and back in the same day, and they're controlled between the airport, the ground, straight back to the airport, and which gives them some lenience from the government, is my understanding, is that they're actually quite happy, given the restrictions that are in place, that they won't really be seeing anyone else. They won't go to a hotel. They won't be having breakfast out and doing all that kind of stuff, which exposes them further to risk. So that'll be interesting.
Well, so I guess probably straight off the bat, like I think if North Melbourne have to hang around and wait for Essendon, that's not a bad thing for their players, because you can go straight from there, jump in a recovery pool.
Yeah.
You know, they're out in Western Sydney. They're near the Giants facilities. I'm certain that the AFL will have an arrangement where they'll be able to go and use
and pool and everything.
Yeah. So I think in terms of travel, the North Melbourne guys will benefit travelling home. Their bodies will be better because of it, because they've got 2 hours before Essendon finishes, effectively. Or it's 2.5 hours, really. And then Essendon's still going to take another hour or two after that to get to the airport and everything. So for the Kangaroos, their bodies will have a chance and ability to recover better, in my opinion. I probably reckon Essendon will feel better on the day than North, because they'll have an additional 2 hours of preparation time pre-game, which I would prefer. This is speaking of being a former athlete, former star athlete. I hated getting off a plane and playing, like going straight to the gym and starting training and then playing a game. I hated it. I just didn't feel normal. These guys travel a lot more, so they'll have a lot more normalcy around it. But I think yeah. I'm in the North camp. I think North will be better because of it.
Who do you think win both games?
GWS and Essendon, if they're serious, should win.
I agree. I agree with the tips. I think that for the back half of the year, North are a bit of a smoky for me.
Yes.
I think that their culture, their age profile, and the culture of their club.
People need to start realising North are not a young side.
Yeah, they're
still not a young side.
Exactly. They've still got a lot of experience. They're a really senior side. And they've got a lot of guys that I think would be saying, and I know a lot of clubs would be doing this, but I think North, more than anyone, given their age profile, will be saying, we've got an opportunity here. Everyone else is going to be down, and we're going to be the one club that's up. And a lot of clubs will be saying that, as I said.
Hawthorn and North are the two.
Yeah, age profile. They're high on the age profile, and I think that both of those clubs will really try to use this period. So, look, North are a club, I think, to watch a little bit. Last game of the rounds is the other derby.
So this is east versus southeast versus west.
It's more like the battle for Marvel.
It's more the
St Kilda Western Bulldogs.
It's more the battle of the most western and the most southern sides.
The battle of who's your second club. A lot of people have the Dogs as a second club. A lot of people have the Saints as their second club.
Look, this is actually I'm gonna love. This is one I've already said to my wife I'm watching. So the dinner will be made, and I'll probably sit there with Ava in my arms and watch it. And the reasoning for this one is that both sides, really have something to prove. I think it's really important that both of these teams win this game. So St Kilda, obviously, with the off season they've had, and they're not going to be advantaged by COVID at all, because of all the new recruits.
Yep.
But they've effectively built a side to try and compete over the next few years. effectively, if they don't win this, they're 0-2, and
Yep.
they lost a winnable game in round one.
They lost the game they should have won in round one, and
They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
yeah,
So,
and the Dogs are a young, skewing age profile that have new key position players. So again, they missed that time to gel, Bruce and Keith.
yeah.
And I think that the Dogs weren't as good as everyone said they were at the start of the year anyway.
But you and I have
I know we've talked about that for a long time. We both sort of agree that they were overestimated. That was our opinion anyway. For me, this is a toss of a coin game. I think that the Dogs will probably be heavily backed, but for me, this is a toss of a coin to who's going to win this one.
I really do think that I'm going to back the Dogs, so I'll put it out there.
I'll back the Saints.
And I agree with you that it's toss of a coin, but I also think that, between the two teams, the one that's got to make the real statement. I think St Kilda have forgiveness. The Dogs are starting to lose that, especially after making finals last year.
Yeah, after the sneaking into finals, getting belted by the Giants, and then getting belted by Collingwood in round one. If they fall over St Kilda, people will ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I mean, the questions that if you were watching them last year when they lost to St Kilda and the Gold Coast and other clubs like that anyway, you would say they've still got the same question marks as last year. It's the same side. They're just a year older.
They're young and inconsistent.
Exactly. Next year, completely agree. Give Keith 1 year, give Bruce 1 year in the side, getting used to the system, getting used to the players they're playing around, age everyone 24 months, give Bailey Smith a bit more time in that midfield, give everyone a bit more time to work out how that mix should feel. And I think that they'll be great.
Yep.
I don't think it's this year.
Yep, I tend to agree. So, I mean, we're not going to run through any of the other rounds. We can do that in future weeks. But I guess probably from here, John, for the podcast, we're going to start to return to a bit more of our analytics. Probably one thing for our listeners over the last few weeks to keep ourselves occupied. A few people who listen to the podcast are following us, and we follow them on Twitter and other things. We've all joined together to do and some of our mates as well. We've done a keeper draft, and our keeper draft league is 18 sides. So it's 18 sides. Each side has 30 players. So we're obviously going off the Supercoach platform. And effectively what we're going to run with, I think, the rules, John, and you're the commissioner, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're going to retain 18 players.
Correct.
At the end of the season and delist 12.
Yep.
So it's going to be a bit of a high turnover keeper league.
Sorry, as far as the keeper league goes, it's a low turnover keeper league. It's high turnover for AFL lists, but a lot of keeper leagues turn over minimum 50% of the list.
Really?
Yeah. So it's actually low turnover for a keeper league. It advantages longer term planning, which I like it because it saw some interesting sort of strategies come out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to talk through that and maybe even get some comments from some of the boys as well. But I think probably what was fascinating, just at a real high level, real quickly, was just the way everyone very quickly skewed young. Like, I couldn't believe, we're talking guys like Rowan Marshall, Tim English, Matt Rao, who has played Hunter Clark. There's another one. These guys are all taken ahead of Tim Kelly, Max Gawn, Zach Merritt, Matt Fife, Dustin Martin. You sit there and you go, whoa, like Patrick Dangerfield went at pick 40. So, I mean, it's going to be fascinating to analyse this at the end of the year, because we really just don't know, I guess, how it's all going to pan out. I know that you and I kind of did the same thing. I think we went in with the intention, we had picks 7 and 8. So John had 7 and I had 8. And we went in probably with the intention of picking a younger skewed list. But very quickly, all the guys we're playing with, who are all quite knowledgeable about football and their individual sides, they all started to skew young. And so I think I know I pivoted very early to go older, and I know John did as well. I mean, pick 29, which was Nat Fife, was mine. And I just couldn't believe he was sitting there for me at pick 29. So basically, once I picked Nat Fyfe, I was pretty much down the track of picking 26-year-olds and above.
Yeah, and for me, it probably came into the 6th round pick for me, because in my top 6 picks, I had both Xavier Dersma, Bailey Smith, and I was and Jared Witts was my oldest player, but I was really trying to keep my age under 24. And then once I picked Dylan Shield in the 6th round, and then I looked at the players available for the next selection, and I was like, I can find some reasonable 24-year-olds, but I was like, there are guys getting picked. So I think what's the 7th round, and look, Max King's going to be a very good player, but took Max King in the 7th round, for example, and that was 2 picks before I took Jaden Short, who was a 24-year-old and is currently in the best 22. Yeah. And that was sort of when I went, okay, then I have to skew older than this, because older players are being undervalued. Short-term performance is being undervalued, should I say, because a lot of these players went, I'm picking a 10 to 12 year player, which is what I did when I selected Bailey Smith. What they sort of forget is that that's a 60% chance of a 10 to 12 year player. Or a 50% chance in some players' case. It's a chance at a long-term player versus the guarantee of a premium player right now. So we will keep you up to date on that as the year goes on, of course.
And I think it's worth also noting that, like, we obviously have a bias towards our own strategies. I mean, to be honest, I'm actually quite jealous of a couple of the sides that we're against, because they were definitely sides that I was wanting to kind of pick, but I just really saw value every time I was, flicking through. It was, pick 152, so around 9, people are picking Adam Chera and these sorts of Oscar Allen and these sorts of guys. Meanwhile, Nick Haynes, Jeremy McGovern, Hugh Greenwood, they're all still on the table. That kind of, for me, like, even though Nick Haynes he was my selection, even though he's 28, it's like, well, I've got a 3-year, player who's going to score about 80 and he's guaranteed best 22. Adam Chera, he's playing at the moment, but hasn't set the world on fire, has he?
I'm not even sure if Chera's going to be a genuine AFL player, and that's sort of where it sort of got to, is that a lot of people were tossing the coin, and look, 1 or 2 teams will get it right, and will benefit from it long term. We sort of just took the low risk approach, which was picking players that we know are good.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, we took a very low risk approach, I guess, in the end.
Yeah.
And probably what's also worth noting and giving a shout out to Dieter, he managed to steal just about every young player you and I liked. Will Gould is now a member of his side.
I'll get him out of there. Don't worry. I've got Bailey Smith. So he's got Will Gould, I've got Bailey Smith. I know mine is much more valuable than his, but I have a feeling I can work that out over a period of time.
Well, he took Riley Collier-Dawkins as well. That's just a slap in the face.
Yeah. I think it's been really interesting. So probably,
and another man-child, Defog.
Yeah, I think that it was funny because Sean and I, so for those of you who play fantasy, like, Sean and I have a really good knowledge of how well everyone that we brought into this league knows footy, and probably not everybody else had the same appreciation for how well everybody else knew footy. So for about the first 200 picks, which is a lot of picks, there were the amount of times people were saying, I had that guy next in line on my shortlist, and there were people that would be 6 picks away and they'd make a shortlist of 5 players they want, and every single one of those players would disappear in the next 5. So it's going to be a really, really competitive league. Looking forward to keeping you guys updated on that as well. The draft is still going, by the way. We're in the 27th round at the moment.
So we're getting close to the end. Everyone's starting to wrap up the list. We're out of midfielders. The last pick was Jackson Mead, a good little prospect over at Port Adelaide. A good pick down in the 27th round, to be honest. But I definitely think we've done a good job, because we got here in a week.
Yeah, so it's been, we accelerated quite quickly from Friday a week and a half ago. So probably coming up to about the 10th day. But it's been, I think we've all really enjoyed it. It's something that allowed us to focus on footy when we weren't focusing on footy.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and thanks to all the guys in the keeper draft. And we won't slam your drafting strategies too hard. I think it's only coming from a place of jealousy, especially for me. So
yeah, it's a place of love. It was a lovely slam.
Yeah, no, but other than that, mate, it's great to be back here with you. Great to be podcasting, and feels good to see you in person. And hopefully there's no double kick of COVID, and we can continue without these full restrictions again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be. I mean, obviously each place... I think locally there's the chance that there could be. I think globally, I think obviously the work on a cure has been fantastic, but the chance that the virus will have a second or third wave is lower than other pandemics in the past. So that's a positive. But yeah, you're right. We just need to continue to do all of the right things locally to make sure that we reduce our risk as much as possible so we can avoid this.
Yeah, so follow what Mickey O says and keep your social distance, and make sure you'll watch that video so we get the reference.
Yeah, exactly.
I might tag it on Twitter or something.
Adams. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, put it on Twitter. Thanks again, guys, for listening. We're glad to be back. If you do have any things that you want us to cover over the next couple of weeks, let us know. We've got some things in mind now, though, so we're pretty happy to start getting back into it all.
Yep, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, and great to be back. See ya.
If you constantly worry that the worst is going to happen, you're not alone. 1 in 4 Australians will experience anxiety. Know when anxiety is talking. Visit Beyond Blue to start a life beyond anxiety.